The girl was a famous celebrity, but she was secretly dating an older man. To keep their secret, she was even willing to commit murder. However, the truth behind everything was truly heartbreaking. One day, the famous detective Kagoro was invited to attend the premiere recording of a mystery drama. But right after filming ended, the male actor Kazami suddenly started causing trouble. He mocked everyone present one by one. He ridiculed Kubota, who played the butler, saying he was already old and useless, and he also mocked the supporting actress Kasumi, claiming she could only maintain her position because of her appearance. At that critical moment, Kubota's son quickly stepped in to ease the tension and mentioned that the female lead, Ruri, had not arrived yet. The moment he heard that name, Kagoro immediately became interested. Ruri was not only a top celebrity, but also a special guest invited to appear on this mystery drama. Before long, a woman wearing a red dress slowly walked onto the set. She was Ruri. Kagoro immediately greeted her with a bright smile, but after taking a closer look, he realized that this famous actress was actually his high school classmate. After exchanging a few words, Kagoro couldn't help asking about her love life. When he learned that she was still unmarried, he became extremely excited. Ruri jokingly said that she had secretly admired Kagoro since their school days, which was why she had never been interested in other men. Those words nearly made Kagoro faint on the spot. Kagoro's daughter Ran immediately grabbed her father's arm and reminded everyone that Kagoro was already a married man. Just as they were talking, filming officially began again. Originally, this was only supposed to be a staged mystery performance. However, during the recording, the lead actor Kazami suddenly came up with a malicious idea. He secretly changed the script and threw the responsibility of solving the mystery onto Kagoro. Clearly wanting to embarrass him in front of everyone, Kagoro tried to find an excuse to avoid the challenge, but Kazami publicly mocked him for being incompetent. Fortunately, at the crucial moment, Conan used his tranquilizer dart to put Kagoro to sleep. Then, using Kagoro's identity, he perfectly solved the mystery. Everyone burst into applause, praising Kagoro for truly living up to his reputation as a famous detective. However, this scene only made Kazami consumed by jealousy. He couldn't stand Kagoro stealing the spotlight from him. So in anger, he stepped on Masaru, the actor who was pretending to be the corpse. This action immediately angered Kubota, but Kazami didn't care at all. He even threatened Kubota, telling him to treat him better, or else he would reveal Kubota's secret lover. Kazami's arrogant attitude angered everyone present, but because he was the sponsor's son, he acted without restraint. Seeing that the atmosphere had completely fallen apart, the director had no choice but to announce a break and continue filming half an hour later. After that, Kagoro and the others toured the mansion under Ruri's guidance. When they reached a corner of the hallway, several people happened to walk out of the lounge. Ruri suddenly froze for a moment. Then she turned to look outside the window and suggested that everyone go see the snowy scenery. It was the first snow of the year. Everyone followed her outside without thinking too much. But while everyone was enjoying the snow, Conan suddenly noticed that Ruri had disappeared. The next moment, a scream came from the second floor of the mansion. It was Ruri's voice. Kagoro immediately rushed upstairs, only to find Kazami lying in a pool of blood. There was a deep knife wound across his neck. The police quickly arrived at the scene, and Inspector Sango immediately began investigating. Based on the condition of the body, he determined that the time of death was around 8 to 8:20 p.m., and the murder weapon was likely a sharp blade about 10 centimeters long. However, after searching the entire mansion, the police still couldn't find any blood-stained weapon. The 4 suspects were searched on the spot, but nothing was found either. The only things discovered at the scene were the props used for filming. Everyone was gathered in the living room, waiting to be questioned. During the investigation, Conan keenly noticed that Masaru and Kasumi were actually in a romantic relationship. Combined with what Kazami had said earlier about Kubota having a secret lover, Conan realized that the person Kazami was referring to was most likely Ruri. Sure enough, Kubota soon pulled Kagoro aside and questioned him about why he was getting close to Ruri. Kagoro explained that they were simply old classmates who had not seen each other for many years, and Kubota's expression finally softened. Meanwhile, Conan continued searching for the murder weapon, but he found nothing. Just then, someone from the production crew noticed something unusual about the tape on the floor of the set. Conan crouched down to examine it and discovered a noticeable bulge underneath the tape. When he peeled it open, he found cotton hidden inside. At that moment, he immediately figured out the method the killer had used to hide the weapon. However, he still had no idea who the culprit was. Conan recalled that it was Ruri who suddenly suggested everyone go outside to watch the snow. But at that time, there were only 5 minutes left before filming resumed. Her suggestion had been far too sudden. While he was thinking about this, Kagoro walked toward him from the other end of the hallway. Through the reflection on the glass door, the two of them saw each other. In that instant, Conan suddenly had a breakthrough and finally pieced together the entire truth. Meanwhile, Kagoro's smoking habit kicked in, and he became interested in the lighter that belonged to the victim. However, no matter how many times he tried, the lighter would not ignite. This strange detail immediately made him realize something. At the same time, Conan prepared to use his tranquilizer dart on Kagoro so he could put him to sleep and solve the case through his identity. But then he suddenly realized that he had already used up his only tranquilizer dart. With no other choice, Conan tried to send hints to Kagoro through subtle suggestions. However, Kagoro completely ignored him. When they ran into Officer Sango, Kagoro deliberately pretended that he had found no clues, causing Sango to leave disappointed. After Sango left, Kagoro suddenly turned around. His expression became unusually calm. He then asked Ruri to come into a room alone with him and locked the door. Conan was startled. Thinking that Kagoro was about to wrongly accuse Ruri, he quickly placed a listening device near the door. Inside the room, Ruri looked confused and asked Kagoro if he suspected that she was the murderer. Kagoro calmly replied that the real culprit was actually the person she had been desperately trying to protect, Kubota. Then Kagoro continued his deduction. When we were touring the mansion, someone opened the door to the lounge. Through the glass, Ruri happened to see Kubota hurriedly leaving Kazami's room. She immediately realized something was wrong, so she suggested everyone go outside to look at the snow. Giving Kubota enough time to deal with the situation, Ruri tried to defend him. She argued that the police never found the murder weapon, so there was no reason to believe Kubota was the killer. Kagoro smiled coldly. Everyone was misled by the illusion of a 10-centimeter blade. The real weapon was only a utility knife. After the blade was broken off, it was hidden inside the victim's lighter. The killer wrapped the blade with tape to create a makeshift handle. After using it, he stuck the tape back onto the set floor, disguising it as a marking used for the actors' positions. The staff naturally never noticed anything unusual. After hearing Kagoro's reasoning, Ruri stopped trying to argue. She admitted that she was the culprit. Kagoro then asked her, "If you were really the murderer, where would you have hidden the blade inside the lighter?" Without hesitation, Ruri answered, "Of course, inside the lid." But when Kagoro opened the lid, there was nothing inside. This type of oil lighter had a double-layer structure. Inside the mechanism was cotton used to absorb fuel and help it burn. Kagoro explained that Kubota had removed the cotton first, then hidden the broken blade inside the lighter's inner mechanism. This murder was most likely an impulsive act. There were no traces of gloves at the scene, meaning Kubota's fingerprints were probably still on the tape and the blade. Then Kagoro revealed a detail that even Conan had failed to notice. Ruri was desperately protecting Kubota, not because they were lovers. The real reason was that Kubota was her biological father. When Kubota questioned Kagoro earlier, the expression on his face was not hatred or hostility. It was the deep concern of a father worried about his daughter. Kagoro deduced that Kubota killed Kazami because he was afraid Kazami would reveal the truth about their father-daughter relationship, causing Ruri to be dragged into a public scandal. To protect his daughter, Kubota acted impulsively and committed a terrible crime. Ruri no longer tried to deny it. Instead, she attempted to persuade Kagoro with her charm, hoping that he would help her hide the truth. Then she revealed what had happened in the past. Back then, Kubota met Ruri's mother at a small theater. They fell in love at first sight, but eventually broke up because of their incompatible personalities. 3 months later, Ruri's mother discovered that she was pregnant with Kubota's child. It was only recently that the father and daughter reunited on the set. Kubota immediately recognized Ruri and, filled with guilt, wanted to make up for the years of missing father-daughter memories. With tears in her eyes, Ruri begged Kagoro to hide the truth. She didn't want her father to spend the rest of his life behind bars, but Kagoro firmly refused. He told her that precisely because they were classmates, he could not agree to such a request, because he didn't want her to spend the rest of her life trapped in a painful lie. In the end, with Kagoro's guidance, Ruri chose to persuade Kubota to turn himself in and take responsibility for his actions. That day, after school, Conan accompanied Ayumi to a dental clinic for a tooth extraction. When Conan saw that the dentist was a beautiful woman, he decided to wait for Ayumi and go home with her afterward. However, he never expected that the beautiful dentist would ask him to leave first, saying that she would personally drive Ayumi home after the procedure. With no other choice, Conan could only leave. During the preparation for the procedure, Ayumi noticed a deck of Kamen Rider playing cards on the table. She specially picked out a heart card and secretly put it into her pocket, hoping it would bring her good luck during the tooth extraction. The procedure went smoothly, and after it was finished, she placed the card back into the deck. The next day, Ayumi began sharing her experience of having her tooth removed with her friends. Later, the detective boys started talking about the murder case that happened the previous night. Coincidentally, the crime scene was the same apartment building where the dentist, Yuko, lived. Moreover, Ayumi had been called by the police to give a statement the previous night, because Yuko was one of the people who discovered the body. However, the police never suspected her, because the victim's estimated time of death was 7:30 p.m., and Ayumi clearly remembered that at 7:35 p.m., she was woken up by Yuko. That meant Yuko had no time to commit the murder. Conan originally didn't think much about it, but Ayumi's next words immediately caught his attention. It turned out that between 7 o'clock and 8 p.m. last night, Ayumi had actually fallen asleep twice. She only saw the beginning and the ending of Kamen Rider. Normally, the effect of children's anesthesia should not have lasted that long. With many doubts in his mind, Conan returned home, only to find Inspector Magyar there. It turned out that Magyar had come specifically to ask Kagoro for help solving the case. According to the police records, there seemed to be a hidden connection between the victim Minoru and Yuko. 26 years ago, Minoru was suspected of being involved in a kidnapping and murder case. The victim was none other than Yuko's older brother. However, because there was insufficient evidence, Minoru was released in court and had lived freely for all these years. From the perspective of motive, Yuko was currently the only person with the strongest suspicion, but the problem was, according to Ayumi's testimony, she was clearly watching Kamen Rider together with Yuko at that time. So how could Yuko have committed the murder at the same time? While Conan was thinking about the case, Kagoro suddenly declared with confidence that he had already completely figured out Yuko's method. Then he led everyone to Yuko's dental clinic, preparing to reveal the truth on the spot. After everyone gathered, Kagoro began his deduction. The time Ayumi woke up was not actually 7:35 p.m., it was 8:30 p.m. Yuko first gave Ayumi sleeping pills and made her fall asleep. Then she went to the apartment at 7:30 p.m. to commit the murder. At 7:55 p.m., she returned to the clinic and woke Ayumi up. After that, she played a pre-recorded Kamen Rider episode. Then she disguised sleeping pills as painkillers and gave them to Ayumi. Once the medicine took effect, Ayumi fell asleep again. 10 minutes later, Yuko woke her up once more and played the next episode preview of Kamen Rider. By then, the clock had already been moved forward to 8 p.m. In this way, Ayumi developed a false memory of the timeline and believed that Yuko had been beside her the entire time. Kagoro's deduction seemed flawless. However, Ran suddenly noticed something. There was no video recorder in Yuko's apartment at all. Furthermore, Yuko stated that Ayumi had already been sent home at 8:05 p.m. last night. This proved that Kagoro's deduction was completely wrong. The case fell into a deadlock, but Conan became even more certain that Yuko was the real culprit. From the very beginning, Yuko deliberately sent Conan away to prevent him from interfering with her plan. She also deliberately became the first person to discover the body, guiding the police to determine the time of death and creating an alibi for herself. The real mystery was this: the victim died at 7:30 p.m., and Ayumi was woken up at 7:35 p.m. So how could Yuko travel 10 kilometers back and forth and complete the murder within only 5 minutes? Conan then returned to the crime scene apartment to investigate. He discovered that there was a construction site right next to the apartment building. Fresh tire marks were still visible on the ground. When he looked upward, he suddenly noticed something. The curtains in Yuko's apartment were exactly the same as the ones in the dental clinic. At that moment, Conan finally understood everything. The trick was actually simple. The culprit had only changed the order of locations, turning Ayumi into the perfect witness. Conan immediately went to find Yuko. He directly told her that she was the true murderer. Yuko had deliberately arranged the dental clinic and the apartment with identical layouts. Her goal was to create confusion about the location, making Ayumi believe she had always been inside the clinic. Around 7:05 p.m., she used anesthesia to make Ayumi fall asleep. Then she carried Ayumi outside to the construction site and entered the apartment through the emergency stairs. She placed Ayumi in a room with the exact same layout as the dental clinic. At 7:30 p.m., she went into the neighboring room and murdered Minoru. She then turned the television volume up to the maximum, ensuring that the body would be discovered quickly, because the more accurate the time of death appeared, the stronger her alibi became. Afterward, she returned to the room and woke Ayumi up. She let Ayumi watch the beginning of Kamen Rider. Then she gave her sleeping pills disguised as painkillers, causing her to fall asleep again. Taking advantage of that moment, She carried Ayumi back to the dental clinic. By then, it was already 7:54 p.m. When Ayumi woke up, she happened to see the final preview of the episode. In this way, Ayumi mistakenly believed that she had stayed inside the clinic from beginning to end. Everything went perfectly. However, after the murder, Minoru's body remained undiscovered, so Yuko had no choice but to claim that the television was too loud and contact the apartment manager. Only then did she accidentally discover the body together with him. Facing Conan's deduction, Yuko coldly smiled and asked what evidence he had. The evidence was hidden inside the Kamen Rider playing cards. Before her tooth extraction, Ayumi had deliberately taken out a heart card from the deck as a good luck charm. After the procedure, she placed it back. That meant if Ayumi had been here last night, there would be 2 heart cards in the deck, and one of them would still contain Ayumi's fingerprints. Yuko reached out and pulled open the curtains, then she let out a deep sigh and lowered her head, finally admitting all of her crimes. 26 years ago, when she was only 7 years old, she witnessed Minoru kidnapping her own older brother with her own eyes. Unfortunately, because she was too young, no one believed her testimony, and with the lack of evidence, the case was eventually closed. Minoru was released without punishment, but the price of that injustice was carried by her entire family. Yuko couldn't help but sigh. She said that if there had been someone like Conan among the prosecutors or police back then, someone who could uncover the truth through deduction like this, things might have turned out differently.